Hello and welcome to the Vibrant Health Show. Today's topic is stress and heart disease, which is a good one. If you've been following along, all month we've been talking about heart health related topics. So we hit cholesterol, we've done estrogen and heart health, we've done heart healthy foods. So if you missed any of those, make sure you go back and watch those through. But today we're going to finish it out with how stress affects heart disease, because truly these are some of the most staggering numbers, right? And it's the stuff that, like, I know most people know this or you understand, like, stress is bad for your heart. But when you really look at how much of an impact it has on your overall health, especially for heart disease, it really becomes something you need to be focused on. And I find most people say they know, right? I know I'm stressed, I know I have to do better. But how many people are really putting into action a daily plan to make sure they're managing and reducing their stress, right? I talk about it so much because it's that important. In fact, some of the statistics say that up to 90%, they say the average number is 75, but if you really look at deep dive causes, up to 90% of doctor visits are stress related in some way, shape, or form. Because every time you're stressed, it makes everything else feel worse, right? It's what makes your blood pressure go up. It's what makes your rhythm in your heart go crazy. It can make your blood sugars go up. Like, stress creates these very physical responses in the body that can turn into disease and death, right? Like, you can die from heart disease, you can die from a heart attack. And if stress is the trigger for that, don't you think it's incredibly important to learn how to start to manage and protect that stress? So not only do I want to teach you today about how it affects your heart and heart disease, but I want to give you some practical tips that you can start doing to start releasing some of that stress to protect your heart as best as we can. So a couple more statistics I want to share with you. Some of the newer research is showing that having chronic stress in your life, reporting that you have chronic stress in your life, is just as big of a risk factor for heart disease as smoking, right? Like, everyone knows smoking is bad for your heart. That increases your risk of heart disease. And just as bad is chronic stress, right? So you over here sitting there, always mad, always worried, always upset, always doing your to-do list, never having downtime, that is just as detrimental as the person smoking 2 packs a day, because they have a very similar impact on your heart and your cardiovascular system. So really taking that seriously. Another research study I was reading is saying that people who have a very high stress job, if you feel stressed in your job on a regular basis, you increase your risk of getting heart disease by 20% just by having a very stressful, demanding job. And I would put that, the research was looking at job specific, but any life situation. They did another research study showing people who went through one or subsequent divorces also had an increase in 15 to 20% risk of heart disease if those divorces were thought as stressful events in the life, right? So any big stressful event puts strain on that cardiovascular system. Now, those events can look different for everybody, right? What stresses you out might be different than somebody else, might be different than me. But what I really want you to evaluate right now before we dive into this and reflect, please really actually think about this. Think about yourself. And if you're open to putting it in the comments, I would love to have some interaction on this. Do you consider yourself a stressed out person? Yes or no? Now, let me dive a little bit deeper into what that could look like. Because some people are like, stress, but it's the same person who's like, I have all of these things to do, and I have kids, and I have sports, and I have everything, and I never have time to myself, and I can't remember the last time that I just could sit and read a book. Like, that's also stress. So the questions I ask when we're kind of diving into this is, throughout the day, at any given point of the day, do you feel at peace and do you feel at rest? Or do you feel like you're constantly thinking about something, doing the checklist? Maybe it's job related, maybe it's family related, maybe it's related to your health, right? Maybe you're stressed, maybe you're worried, maybe it's a loved one. Throughout the day, more often than not, do you feel at rest and peace? Or do you feel that sense of stress? Maybe you'll call it busyness, maybe you call it anxiety, right? We all kind of label that feeling in our body a little bit differently. But which one of those do you tend towards more often? To go a little bit further, do you feel like you get stressed? Some people will call it moody, some people will call it irritable, some people will call it sad, right? No matter what the word is that you resonate with, do you feel something that's stressful or that your mood is impacted at least once a day. And most people, if you really think about it, you're like, yeah, I do have a lot of times during the day that I feel stressed, I feel busy, maybe I feel pulled in too many directions, I feel a little bit anxious, I feel worried. Those are all signs that you're under chronic stress. If this stuff is happening almost every single day, that is chronic stress. Now, if you're the person who's like once or twice a month, I have a bad day. Other than that, like I've got this. I feel very in control of my emotions. I feel like I got a handle on things. I'm not so worried about that situation. But the people who are sitting out there right now being like, yeah, almost every day I either get irritated or I get worried or I get anxious or I feel really busy. That's something I want you to really pay attention to and start putting a plan in place to minimize the amount of stress you feel during the day. Because this is what happens when you're stressed. We're going to talk about two pieces of it. So first, I'm going to go through and read you kind of a list of physiologically when you are stressed for whatever reason, right? A major big stressful event or what you perceive as stressful, like too much on your to-do list that you don't know how to get done. Either way, whether it's like a major trauma or just too much busyness, your physiology doesn't know the difference, right? You might think it does, but it doesn't. That same release of chemicals and hormones are happening, whether it's a tiger or it's a to-do list, right? So this is what happens every time you start to feel stressed or get in a stress state. Number one, stress increases inflammatory cytokines. That is inflammation in your body. That feeling you get when you're stressed, that feeling in your chest, that overwhelmed kind of rush feeling releases inflammation in the body. When that inflammation is released, it starts a cascade of all kinds of other things, including increasing some of your more inflammatory cholesterols and doing something called oxidation to that cholesterol, which is what makes it hard and dense, which if you watch my cholesterol class are the more dangerous types and can increase plaquing. So it's not just the cholesterol, it's the cholesterol in the presence of that oxidation because of inflammation that now makes it more of the dangerous plaquing cholesterol. And stress causes that physically. So picture that in your body, right? It's like, okay, I feel stressed. There's physical changes happening inside my body that are detrimental to my heart and to my physiology. So inflammation, plaquing, that happens when you're stressed. We decrease blood flow to the heart. Stress decreases blood flow, and less blood flow to the heart weakens the heart muscle. Those are some of the things that can contribute to blood pressure. Stress alone increases blood pressure, right? And blood pressure is dangerous, but making the heart work harder because we don't have enough natural blood flow. There's too much inflammation. Now the heart has to work harder. Now it's pumping faster. Now your blood pressure's up. These are all physiological things that happen when you're stressed. Not to mention palpitations, abnormal rhythms of your heartbeat, right? A lot of people with anxiety, that's exactly what it feels, right? Is that weird kind of fluttery feeling in your heart, feeling those palpitations because of stress. How many times does somebody go to the doctor thinking they're having a heart attack, and what do they tell you it really was? Stress, right? Anxiety. And yes, I hate that we're always just told, oh, you're stressed, go home. But the stress is the trigger to all of the other things going on. We have to take it seriously. So palpitations, even people who have things like AFib and real things going on in their heart, it's always made worse in times of stress, right? Like we know these things, but we don't take it as seriously, right? We know we should eat well. We know we should exercise. We know we shouldn't be stressed. But what are we doing to make sure that's actually happening? So having those palpitations, we talked about blood pressure, but then we also have that inflammatory response when we're stressed that alters other systems. We have that cortisol release from our adrenals, right? That stress hormone. Cortisol is detrimental over time in large doses to your cardiac function, right? It can give you extra risk of stroke and heart disease by having too many big pushes of cortisol too many times over and over again. It damages your gut, right? There's a very real heart health gut connection. There's lots of research really tying these things together now. There's almost nothing your gut isn't connected to, right? So we talk about gut health so often, but with heart, it's the same thing. So if you have all of this stress, the stress is making abnormal function in your gut. Some people end up having loose bowels. Some people have constipation. Some people have bloating. Some people get SIBO. There's many ways it can manifest, but if your stress is causing GI upset, having that abnormal gut microbiome is actually putting you at higher risk of heart disease and stroke and all of these other things. So making sure it's very clear that stress has not only an impact on our mood, but very physically on our body and especially on our heart and our cardiovascular system. I just wanted to make sure that was clear and you also understood how that affects your body. And then we have the second side of it, right? So physiologically, when you're stressed, all of that stuff happens immediately, right? Like you're not even thinking about it. You're not making it happen. Your body just goes ahead and does it. But then we have the lifestyle choice piece of the puzzle, right? So picture this, you've had an extremely stressful day. You've been stressed out. You're not in a very good mood. You get to the end of the day. Is that the time you're like, I'm going to prepare, some really healthy food. I'm going to have, maybe a kale smoothie. I'm going to make sure I have all my well-rounded vegetables. I'm going to drink lots of water. I'm going to eat extra good because I've had a terrible day. For most of you, that's not how that goes, right? You're super stressed out, and that's when everything flies out the window. You're like, this is not my day. I've been too busy. I wasn't able to plan. You tend to make poor decisions when you're in a state of chronic stress. It's easier to say, I just want the convenience food. It's easier to go for that glass of wine or that beverage you prefer over water. It's easier to just sit and want to watch TV instead of going for your walk after dinner, because that stress just puts you in this almost freeze state where you don't want to do those things. You don't feel like doing those things. So people who live in a chronic state of stress tend to make more poor lifestyle choices consistently because you're not in the right mind frame to make those healthier choices. In addition to that, stress really decreases your sleep quality. It really decreases your energy. It really decreases just brain function and communication, which again kind of keeps that vicious cycle going. You don't sleep good. You don't feel well. You're stressed out. You have another busy day. You don't make great choices and it starts all over tomorrow. That pattern needs to break. And for a lot of people, I notice the first thing that has to happen is some sort of consistent daily stress management. And then those other choices and those other habits start to become easier to commit to once you feel like you're out of some of that stress. Does that make sense? Is this resonating with anybody? Do you know or you feel like that sometimes? Yes, she had a heart attack 3 years ago. Popped up on your phone. I love how the universe works like that sometimes, right? Gives you exactly what you want to hear. Okay, so let's talk about types of stress and then things that we can do to minimize them. Now, here's the thing, and this is a conversation I have with every person that I work with one-on-one, is you're never going to eliminate stress, right? You're not. That's not the goal. And I think that's kind of delusional thinking if you think that's the goal. And I'll have people say, oh, well, if I can just get through this, it will be better. Or if I can just get through this season, things will be better. There's always something that we can be stressed about, right? Like that's the reality, whether it's what's going on in the world, what's going on in your life, your own thoughts. There's always the potential to be stressed if you let it. So the goal is not complete elimination of stress. It is reducing how much it physically impacts our body so that that stress doesn't have to destroy our health, our body, our heart, and all of those other places, right? So zero stress is unrealistic, but managing that stress and also reframing our opinion on that stress. So you probably all know somebody, maybe this somebody is you, maybe it's not, you don't have to tell us, but you all know somebody who overreacts about all the things, right? Like one little thing goes wrong and they're stomping their foot, they're slamming the door, they're, oh, this always happens to me. This is just my luck. Like, you know, a person like that. And then you also know the flip side, someone could have the exact same thing happen to them and they're like, oh, well, that wasn't very fun, but it's all right. I can figure this out, right? Like everything works out. It's going to be okay. It could have been worse. And they're looking at all the things that could have, thankfully I made it home safely. This and this didn't happen. But you can take two people in the exact same situation and you can get two completely different responses to that situation. Please hear me on this. Be person B in that situation. If you are somebody that lets the little things get to you, it's not doing you or anyone else any favors, right? You are only hurting yourself if you allow these things to bother you at a magnitude that for the most part isn't even warranted, right? Isn't worth it for the amount of strain that it puts on your body. So being very real with yourself, if you're like, yes, I am someone who does that. I want you to start putting some of these things in place that we're going to talk about to be able to pull yourself away from the edge before you just go jumping off at all of these different situations, right? So number one, very real evaluation of yourself. Am I somebody who tends to overreact to stressful situations, likely making them worse, or do I handle them pretty well? And I feel like I have good control over that. So once you know that about yourself, we have to start building in things. Now, one of the things I'm such a huge fan of is always having a daily stress management practice that you do every single day, whether you're stressed or not. One of the most important things for your nervous system is that you're training it how you want it to respond, right? So if we're training our brain that we want it to stay in this nice level-headed, state of neurotransmitter function, we don't want it going all the way up here. We don't want it falling all the way down here to depression. We're teaching it and we're training it how to stay in a very active but functional range. It works the best if you do it before shit hits the fan, right? So if you're somebody who the only time you try and do breath work is when you're already really mad or something bad happened, of course you're not going to feel like it works. Your body doesn't know what you're trying to do. Or if you're somebody who waits till you're crazy stressed out and then tries to sit down and do a meditation, but you haven't done one for like 6 months, you're probably not going to get the same response as somebody who does this consistently, and their nervous system starts to know, oh, when she does this, that means she wants me to calm down. For example, I try and use the same 2 or 3 things when I start my stress management practice and when I end my stress management practice. So for me, I always start with a very similar type of breath work. I'll show you in a second. And I always end journaling 3 things that I'm grateful for. So no matter what I do in the middle section, my brain knows, okay, when she starts to breathe like this, it's time to settle down. And then when I do my 3 gratitude writings at the very end of whatever session, my body knows, great, we're going to change our mood. We're going to move about the rest of the day in gratitude. We're not going to stay in this funk. But I do that every day, even when I'm not stressed, even when I'm having a great day, even when I feel wonderful, because I'm building the muscle, right? We're building the stress management muscle. We have to do it consistently. So let me teach you first a very simple breath work. This is something everybody can do, very, very easy, very, very simple. It's just simple box breathing. And what that means is that you breathe in, you hold, you breathe out, and you hold for the exact same amount of time. Now, there's lots of different formats of breathing. You can try many different ones. I just want to give you a simple tool that at first, I want you to start doing this every single day in the morning. This is something you can do in 2 or 3 minutes. I want you to do it every day. But you're also going to start adding in when you feel stressed. So when a stressful situation happens, where you start noticing that you're getting overwhelmed, you are going to take 2 minutes and you're going to sit back down and do your box breathing. So the way I like to do it is I breathe in through my nose for the count of 4. I hold my breath in for the count of 4. I breathe out through my mouth for the count of 4. I hold my breath out. So I've exhaled, but I'm holding that exhale for the count of 4. And then I breathe back in through my nose for 4. And then you just repeat that. In through your nose for 4. Do it with me. If you're just watching me, do it with me. In through your nose for 4. Hold your breath in. Breathe out through your mouth. Hold your breath out. Back in through your nose. And then repeat that. You might only have 30 seconds, right? You might be busy. There might not be time. You might only get to do it a couple of rounds. It's still helping. It's toning your vagus nerve. It's calming your nervous system. You're flooding your body with oxygen, which tells you that you're calm. Remember, we said that we decrease blood flow. We decrease oxygen to the heart in stress. So if you know when you're stressed, your body decreases oxygen. It shuts everything off. Just simply giving it back oxygen, your brain hears, oh, they're breathing. She must be safe. And it starts to calm down some of those emotions. It's so simple. It almost seems too simple, but physiologically, it puts our body into that rest. So if nothing else, every day, you're going to start your day with a couple of minutes of doing that box breathing. Use it throughout the day. And then you can continue to build your daily practice. We're going to have in April, we're going to have a challenge coming out. You'll get all the details about it. But part of that challenge is going to be building a good morning routine. So I think I want you to start now. We'll kind of add little pieces as we go as a team. But in April, we'll have a full morning routine that we want to add, because that's how you build that stress management muscle. So adding those in are phenomenal. A couple of other things I want to just touch on. Again, a lot of these, I just want to know if you're actually doing them consistently that help with stress management. So number 1, breathing. There was a quote that I've really realized over and over again that I believe fully. But if you can control your breath, you can control your life. Because if you think of any really bad situation, we tend to either breathe fast and shallow when we're scared, or we don't, right? Half of you guys hold your breath most of the day and you don't even know it, right? Check in with yourself midday and be like, am I taking big breaths? Have I breathed? Has it been like 10 seconds since I took a breath? Most of you don't breathe and you don't realize it. But just being able to control that breath, if you're in fear, if you're in stress, if there's like when there's really bad stuff going on, if you can control your breath, you will have a different physical response to that situation. Never underestimate how powerful just being able to breathe properly is for your health and for your stress. So breathing, simple, but very, very effective, number one. Number two, exercise and stress is highly documented to be effective. But I know when you're stressed, it's like the last thing you want to do, or it's the last thing you feel like you have time for. Reminding you it doesn't have to be complicated. It's moving your body 20 to 30 minutes a day. And that doesn't mean the gym. That doesn't mean weights. That doesn't mean the treadmill. It just means moving your body for 20 or 30 minutes a day. If you have a habit, maybe you have kids and you do stuff with them in the evening after school, get on the floor and stretch while you're talking to them, or if they're doing their homework, or if you are watching a show as a family, stretch, move around, do some light squats. Like, don't overcomplicate this. But moving your body, again, helps circulate blood flow and oxygen, all things that keep the heart rate better and keep stress off your body. Go for a walk after dinner. If it's too cold where you live, walk around your kitchen 100 times at night. Like, we make these things so complicated. We give ourselves all the excuses not to do it when it really doesn't have to be that complicated. Just move your body. If you have physical limitations, do whatever you can. Maybe you have to sit in a chair and just do punches in the air. Maybe you have to do just very light squats. Like, it doesn't matter. But moving your body changes your mood and changes your brain. Physically stimulates completely different neurons to fire in your brain. Move your body 20 minutes a day at minimum. Don't overcomplicate it. So we're breathing, we're moving, get outside. You know that nature is healing? Do you know that the sound that birds make when you hear a bird tweeting is actually the same, what they call it, the coherence that calms your heart rhythm? Just being outside, hearing a bird calms your heart rhythm. Nature is designed with all of these very cool, beautiful healing tools that you don't even have to do anything, right? Just being out there, things are happening to your nervous system while you realize it or not. Putting your bare feet on the grass is called grounding. It helps release some negative ions that cause stress in the body. It floods you back with good ions that give you energy. Being in the sunlight, all of those spectrums are great for your mood. They give you vitamin D. They help with seasonal affective disorder. Being out in the fresh air, taking your big deep breaths in, listening to the birds, looking at the colors, simply just being outside is healing to your nervous system, helps reduce your stress, and you didn't have to do anything major or complicated or weird that you don't understand. It is simply using the resources that you have around you. So you can't get any simpler than that. Be in nature, be outside. And that doesn't mean it has to be a hike in the woods. Anywhere you are, go outside, see the sky, see the birds, see the colors, take it all in. Breathe, move your body. Every single one of you can do those things. I have people say all the time, well, you don't understand. Like, it's so stressful. I have no time. I do understand. I live a very busy, very demanding life. And if I don't do these things, it feels very different, right? I'm not happy. I don't have energy. I can get very irritable very easily if I don't commit daily to myself to do these practices that help keep my nervous system calm. So I've been doing this for a long time, right? We're going on 15 years. I used to let people kind of tell me all the excuses. Now I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for that. It's like, no, there's no more excuses. There's solutions. Let's figure out, I don't want to hear the 15 things you can't do. Let's find the 3 things you can do. And again, going back to, are you person A or B? Are you the person who wants to sit here right now and think of all the reasons you can't do these simple things? Or do you want to pick one thing that you can and start now and start making movement in the right direction, right? Excuses won't make you healthier. Action in the right direction will. Choose to be that person. Choose to be the person who looks for solutions. Next is sleep. Sleep's a little bit harder. I have to bring up sleep because it's in all of the research. I'm going to do a series on sleep again because I feel like so many people, one of the main complaints I get when somebody starts care is that they don't sleep, poor quality sleep, never feel rested. And there's a lot more detail. Like I hate when people are like, we'll get 8 to 10 hours of sleep every night. Okay, how? Like, can you tell me how that works? Tell me how to do it. But like, I've tried, like I lay down, I try to make it happen. So I know that's frustrating if you don't have answers. I just want to mention that sleep is highly important, but that I will have more information. And I have done several videos in this group before and on YouTube if you want to look for sleep help, if that's a problem. But knowing that good quality sleep, at least 7 hours a night, is very protective to your cardiovascular system, as well as your brain, your mood. We want to make sure we're striving for really good quality sleep, at least 7 hours per night. But I have lots of other information if you want to go find out some more details on how to make that happen, because I know it's not as simple as just telling you you need to sleep more, right? You know that. Now you need to know how to do it. And then lastly, I want to bring up 2 of my absolute favorite stress management herbs. I've not talked about these publicly very much because I didn't have a really simple resource to get them into your hands. But now that I do, I want to make sure I bring these up. I typically, up to this point, only use them for my private clients, but they're so effective and they work so well. And there's a reason I'm bringing them up last. I do not want you to think that taking a calming herb is the fix for your stressful lifestyle. Okay, we have to do the other things, but I also know there are circumstances, there are situations, we have these patterns we have built up for decades that are hard to unwind. So just starting a daily stress management practice doesn't immediately dissipate all of those anxious feelings. So I love having tools that can help you stay calmer in those types of situations. And I have 2 that are my favorite. I'm going to explain to you what each of them does, because most of the time when I explain them, you'll really right away be like, oh yeah, that one sounds like me, or oh, that one sounds more like me. And then I'll put the links down below for you guys to go check these out a little bit more. But my 2 favorite herbs, and I've talked a lot in the past about supportive herbs like ashwagandha. Those are great long-term, right? Those help support your stress response. The 2 I'm going to mention are the ones that are more potent if you are stressed. So if you have a high stress job, if you're going through a stressful event in your life right now, maybe there's some loss or trauma or a big move or a divorce or something, and you really feel like there's a lot of emotion, maybe you're prone to anxiety, maybe you're prone to depression. These are things you can use when you feel like the emotions are really heavy or the stress is really heavy. And there are definitely certain seasons that I use these more often than not, right? There are times I'm using them multiple times a day, and then there's months I don't have to use them at all. But I love to have them on hand because when I do need them, they are very, very effective. So the first one is called California Poppy. Again, I'll put all of these in the notes for you. California Poppy is my favorite, and I'll tell you why. Because when I'm stressed, and this is what I want you thinking, is this how you manifest stress or not, right? You might not be the same as me, but when I'm stressed, I feel it in my body, right? I feel that heaviness in my chest. My neck gets tight. I typically get a headache. My body feels most of my stress. What I love about California Poppy is not only is it calming to your emotions, it's also very calming to your body. It has like a mild analgesic effect, so it can reduce a little bit of pain. It's great for headaches. It's great for a lot of neck tension. So if you're the type of person who, when you get stressed, you feel like, I know my body is like immediately, my posture changes. I can feel it everywhere. Like I'm just like tight and tense and my body aches, hurts. I get a headache. That's my typical go-to when I'm stressed. So California Poppy works the best for me because it really kind of does both of those things. What I love also about California Poppy is there are days, like let's say you're having a really crazy day at work, you can take it 3 to 5 times in a day. And then other days you don't have to take it at all. It's not something you have to take consistently to build up in your system, like something like ashwagandha. It's more of a use as needed type of thing. So California Poppy, my favorite. I joke about this, but I'm not joking. If you come to my house, I have a bottle of California Poppy in my office, in my kitchen, in my car. Like I have it everywhere because when I need it, I want it to be right there because it really does help. So I always have a stash of that on hand. Again, stressful times I use it more. Calmer times I don't use it at all, but it is a tool I have consistently. So California Poppy is my favorite. Now the liquid herbs, they are tinctures, so they taste strong, right? So you can dilute it in water if you want. I just take mine. So here's my California Poppy. I just take mine and I put it straight, the dropper, in my mouth, and I'll take it just like that. It doesn't taste wonderful. It's an herb, right? It tastes like an herb. It's very strong flavored. but you get used to it, or you can dilute it in water, then it tastes just fine. But if you've never done herbal tinctures before, they're definitely potent. So California poppy is my favorite. The second one that is a lot of other people's favorites, and I like it, but it's just not the one I need the most often, is called kava. Kava has been used in ceremonies for centuries all over the world in place of things like alcohol. So if you're somebody who is trying to replace your evening drink, your wine, with something else because you really like that sensation of, and it doesn't have to be just to replace alcohol, but it gives a similar sensation that if you're the person when you're stressed, your mind races. You can't turn off your thoughts. You feel scattered. You feel like everything's up in your head and it's going nonstop and you can't calm it down. Kava's great to kind of slow down some of that brain noise. It doesn't have as much of the physical like pain effect. Now it will help calm your body if you're tense and mind racing, but it doesn't have the same analgesic effects as California poppy, but it's wonderful for slowing that brain. I do use it often if people have focus issues, ADD, ADHD. If you have a big project to do, Kava's great at just kind of helping you zone in a little bit, but really getting that mind to slow down so you can calm down. Both of them can be helpful for sleep, right? If you're calming yourself down enough. But Kava's really, if you're the person that you're all up in your head, you're replaying that conversation 15 times, or all the stuff just never turns off, Kava's wonderful to help with that. The bigger difference with kava is I wouldn't take it as often in a day. California poppy gets excreted from the body very quickly. So you can take it multiple times. I'm only probably taking kava once or twice in a day. Usually I'm not taking it more than 2-3 times maximum, where California poppy you could take more often. And just a note on kava, if you ever look up kava and you see any negative reviews, it's always about sourcing. There are places that don't source their kava properly. And if you're using the outside part of the kava, there are toxins in the husk of the kava or the shell of the kava. And if people aren't processing it well, you can get some of those toxic properties in the kava. So always making sure it's a good source and organic, which is the one I recommend as well. If you're getting the right source, there's absolutely no worry about that with kava at all. But some of those studies are showing poor quality kava. So I've done the research very deeply. My husband, so Justin loves kava. That's kind of his go-to. He uses that a whole lot more because he's the mind racing type of person, versus California poppy is my favorite. So you're also welcome to try both, right? Like you'll figure out which one you like better. But most people, when I describe it like that, you can kind of pick which one you feel like sounds like you the most. But if you know you're stressed, right, and you're putting in the action, we talked about the action steps, but you're someone who's quick to stress, it is worth adding some of these extra herbs to protect, to help calm, to give you just an extra layer of protection, because stress is a huge deal for your health. Not just a huge deal. Like, I don't want to be morbid about it, but like, stress will kill you. It will cause disease. You can have a heart attack. Like, you have to learn how to get control over your stress response. And hopefully some of the tips I shared today are a good starting place. Again, over the next couple of months, we're going to dive deep in these challenges. We're going to make morning routines together, but let's start here. Do what you can, right? Don't worry about what you can't. Start with what you can. And if you feel like you need that extra support, I'll add those links below. So hopefully there was good information in there for everybody and you learned something. I will come back and answer any questions as I see them pop up. But thank y'all very much. Manage your stress, take care of your heart, and we'll be back next week with a new episode.